Yo, welcome back to One More Mana. My name's Derek, and today we're getting into a fun video, that I had been meaning to do for a while, and I was kind of reminded when someone asked me on Twitter what my favorite deck was, and I realized I haven't really done a list of my favorite decks, and I want to do a top 5 list of my favorite decks of all time. Basically, decks that I've played at various stages. Some of these I still play today. Some have been taken apart for years now, but for whatever time I did play them, these were my favorites. And I think it's going to be really fun kind of examining how I've changed as a player and really how the format's changed over time. But if you want any of these commanders, any of these decks, or just some specific cards, head on over to TCG Player. TCG Player is awesome. As always, you can get some of that Time Spiral remastered stuff, because despite what Setting Ken may think, Time Spiral remastered is awesome, and those old borders are so beautiful. So go and pick some of that stuff up. And also, we're about to get into Strixhaven. I think that stuff's about to, it never stops. Don't stop, never stop. And that's about to come out soon too. So maybe you want to prep for some of those decks. You can find it all on TCG Player. TCG Player is amazing. Like I always talk about, being able to look through local game stores through there is amazing. And if you use the affiliate link down in the description below, it'll help support the channel as well. Really do appreciate all the help. But now let's jump into this list. And a couple things is, the coolest thing about this exercise for me was seeing, again, like I mentioned, how I changed as a player and how the format's changed has been insane. I've only been playing Commander for about 4 years now, something like that. So it's a relatively short period of time, but to see how much growth I've had with mostly my mindset about the game, and seeing the formats changes has been absolutely insane. It has changed at such a crazy fast pace, at least from my perspective, that it's really insane that it can still be in such a healthy place with that amount of change. And I think that's really cool and kind of speaks to just how amazing Commander is in general. All of the deck lists will be down in the description below. I'll make sure to post all these deck lists. I think I've deck teched all these at this point. If for any reason there's one that hasn't been deck teched, or if y'all, even if you just want a deck update on it, let me know down in the comments. I'd be more than happy. I love these decks. I would talk about these decks all day if I could. So if you want to see more on it, I would be more than happy to do another video. But let's get into this list now. Basically, ranking your Commander decks. Now, I don't have any kids, but I imagine ranking your Commander decks is like ranking your kids, in the sense that everybody has a favorite. They just don't want to say it. This is me saying it. And at number 5, we have my Sidisi Spider Spawning deck. I love Sidisi. Now, this is basically, a lot of these decks you'll notice have been inspired. When I first started learning about Magic, like a lot of people, I watched just a crap ton of the Command Zone, and I used to listen to all their podcasts, and a lot of my early decks were inspired by episodes I heard and wanted to do my own take on, and this is no different. I heard the Sidisi Spider Spawning deck by BDM and wanted to go ahead and build my own version, and it kind of evolved over time. It turned into this graveyard creatures matter thing, where it's basically you're playing like the Spider Spawnings and the Gnawed of the Bones and the Lotlith Giants and the Golgari Grave Trolls and all these different things that care about number of creatures in your graveyard. And you kind of just go all in on that and create some crazy big explosive things and see what happens. It is super glass cannon. I don't really run any mill protection, and I also don't run any mill win con, so no Labman, Jace, Thassa's Oracle, none of that. Just because I think it's really fun to try to go for this big thing, and if it works, you probably win. If not, you just die to mill. This glass cannon nature is really what causes so many explosive, crazy endings to games with this deck. Basically, for the length of time I played this, every time a game ended, something crazy and fun was happening. Something weird was happening because of the way I was trying to win. And it's because it's so easy to interact with and really kind of hard to pull off what you're trying to do. It makes it exciting when you do it, and when you don't, it's still cool because some crazy stuff's happening. One thing that's really interesting about this deck, and I think it might kind of get into the reason why I really don't play it anymore, is how low the level of interaction in this deck was. And I think that speaks about the changing of the format. When I was first started playing this deck, interaction, you wanted to play it, but it wasn't as necessary. There weren't as many commanders that needed to be killed on site. There weren't so many cards that needed to be removed on site, so it didn't matter as much. I think if I played this deck unchanged today, I'd run into some issues, because all of a sudden, someone drops a Smothering Tithe, or someone plays Corvold or Chulane or something, and I'm only running a few removal spells in the deck. I'm not going to have a good time, and I won't even be able to get to those crazy game-ending things. So I think that kind of speaks to the changes of the format, but I think with some tweaks, this deck could be just as much fun in today's meta. Just got to go ahead and update it a little bit, but yeah, for its time and the time I was playing it, this deck was one of the most fun I've ever played. Now at number 4, we have the deck that it's really why I love Commander. This is the deck that really got me into Commander and got me there to stay. It hooked me. And it was my Vial Smasher Thrasios deck. I've done deck techs on all types of Vial Smasher decks. I've done this one, the Vial Smasher Rayhan, Vial Smasher Crom, Vial Smasher Ludovic. I even think I did one with Sakashima. I've done a lot of Vial Smasher decks. And this was the OG one for me. It's so much fun. Again, inspired by an episode of the Command Zone, by Game Nights, when I saw Vile Smash with Thrasios, just learning what Commander was, and I was like, this is crazy. I need more. And it was such a fun deck. Now, one thing, this is the opposite of Sidisi. I stopped playing Sidisi, I feel like, because it couldn't interact and compete enough, even with casual decks. This one was turning into a pub stomper, and that's the reason why I had to stop playing it. It just won too efficiently, basically because it has just so much ramp and so many big spells. Thrasios is always a mana outlet, so I had this terrible mana curve just ramped out the butt. Like, it was insane. And then if I didn't have anything to cast, I could just throw mana into Thrasios to ramp more and draw more cards. And it kind of rewarded, on my part, bad deck building, because I really wasn't. I didn't have a good mana curve. I didn't have a good spread of things. It was just a bunch of big, broken spells. And you know what? As a new player, I loved it. As a new player, it didn't matter how bad my deck building skills were. I was doing stuff and I was winning games. And I think it was awesome to see that. I've kind of talked about this deck, especially the way I had it built, was kind of on training wheels for me. I didn't know a lot of the intricacies and stuff like that, but I could still compete in games and still have a good time. And I think that's really important for newer players. So this deck is probably not a deck I'll ever put together again because it did win too much, but it's always going to have that special place for me for what really just locked in Commander as my favorite way to play Magic. All right, at number 3, we have my Tasigur deck. And it is weird how much Sultai is on this list, considering I really don't play Sultai much anymore. I kind of try to avoid Simic at all costs outside of Merfolk, just because it does too much. It does way too much now. But at the time, I was a wee naive little man and did not know that it was basically doing everything for me. And you know, it doesn't matter. It was so much fun, it didn't matter. The whole point of this deck is to cast Villainous Wealth over and over again. The only win con I'm not running, it's a big mana deck without Exsanguinate, Torment, Hailfire, any of that. All I want to do is cast Villainous Wealth and steal everyone else's win cons. I have deck tech this before. You know, in addition to the deck list, I'm gonna put the deck techs down in the description too if you want to check them out. This one was also on a string of all my decks, inspired by another Command Zone podcast when they had Jeremy Noel on to talk about his Tasigur Villainous Wealth deck. And it was very heavily inspired from that. And I try to tweak it over the years as I played it more and more. It is an awesome time. I will say that it is a little bit slower than, at least the way I had it built, than the decks I'm seeing now, especially when I'm playing on webcam a lot. It feels like it would probably need a little bit more low CMC removal to survive, because this deck was all about turn 7 we'll start doing stuff. Let me just ramp before then. So that might not be the best idea in today's metagame, but either way, it is a super fun deck. And yeah, if I, like everybody who doesn't love Villainous Wealth, if you do love Villainous Wealth, this is your best chance. I think I had cast it, I want to say like 8 or 9 times one game. It's gotten dumb to the point I've cast it. And so if you love it, this is the best shell I've been able to put together to make sure you cast it as much as possible. And now getting into these top 2, this was difficult. I'm not gonna lie, this was hard. These are basically 1A, 1B. These are have separated themselves over these as my 2 favorite decks. These are decks that I really don't ever plan on taking apart, in decks basically, I haven't built a new deck in forever because I only spend my Magic budget on blinging these out instead. I love these decks so much. So at number 2, it hurts to not put this at number 1, but it is going to be Titania, Protector of Argoth. And this deck is so much fun. If y'all know anything about Titania, it's so funny because I've gotten so annoyed myself by playing against rampy land decks that Titania does just enough to make it different where I don't feel like I'm the monster. I definitely am the monster, but it makes me at least feel better when it helps me sleep at night. Basically with Titania, there's a bunch of different game modes you can play as you're doing it. You can go for the regular Titania route of just making as many 5/3 elementals and punching everyone to death. You can go the Field of the Dead route and basically just forget your commander, focus on getting Field of the Dead out and getting it online and try to poop out as many zombies as possible. You can go the Merit Lage route. Quick aside, I realized I think I've been pronouncing Merit Lage wrong for a very long time. I've been calling it Merit Lage. And yeah, then I stopped and thought, I was like, well, Page, that's Page. Sage is Sage. That's not how you say it. So I think I had a revelation. I think it was like 3 days ago where I was just saying it to myself and I had to stop and have a little reckoning. I had a little self-intervention. I was like, I need to, if I love this card so much, how in the hell am I saying it so wrong? So I think it is Merit Lage. I'm going to correct that from here going forward, and then with my luck, I'll find out I was pronouncing it right originally. But Merit Lage is one of my favorite things in existence. The whole Dark Depths, thespian stage thing where you're trying to just cheat out that merit lage. It is so much fun. It's just a big giant 2020 indestructible spaghetti monster. It is amazing, and really there's games where I'll only go for that. Forget everything else, just try to get those 2 lands out as fast as possible and see if I can swing at people with this big spaghetti monster. It is such a good time. Probably one of the weaker versions, because once it gets removed and you've been sacking all your lands to get it out, you don't really have much left. Either way, it's a good time. And then one of my favorite play modes of this deck is just petty. This is the ultimate petty deck, which is the reason why I think I love it so much. Because you can just really focus in to try to kill one player. You can just sack all your lands super early, get a bunch of 5/3s, take someone out, have nothing left, but know that you made the petty move and you feel good about it. You also have ways with strip mines and wastelands to really just take one player out if you're feeling extra salty. I don't recommend it, but some of your best friends, maybe they deserve it. Now, one specifically, Jason's been on the channel quite a few times on our streams, and he plays that Marquesa deck, which he's played on the channel, and sometimes it just gets on a roll. And I think there was one night where he just won 2-3 games in a row. I was extra salty. I felt like I wasn't doing enough, and I just decided, no, you're not winning this game. And I decided to just constantly strip mine, wasteland, tech edge, all these different things just to basically make sure. And at one point, I think I got him down to 1 land, and I was still strip mining him. I'm probably a terrible person for that. Sometimes you gotta get even with your best friends. Sometimes you need to let them know you mean business, and this deck has the potential to do that. I could talk about this deck all day. It is just so much fun. One of the things that I do, and I mentioned, getting back to the big mana ramp lands decks, one thing I hate about playing against those types of decks is, at least a personal frustration, is it feels like the whole strategy of them getting lands into play, well, it also just means they end up with tons of mana. So they get all these big landfall effects and all these synergies, and if you board wipe, well, they still have 2-3 times as much mana as everyone else, and it doesn't matter that you can reset it. This Titania deck is much more of a glass cannon. Spot removal and board wipes will just destroy this deck completely. And because so much of the deck is focused around getting guys Cradle out, sacking all your lands, and using that as your sole mana producer, this deck kind of regularly gets into situations where someone board wipes and I just got nothing left. And to me, that's more fun because it's so interactable. It's somewhat resilient, but at the same time, it's not one of those decks that's just an inevitability. And I do love that about it. It's not a sure thing that turn 10, I'm going to have 50 mana. There's ways to stop that. And to me, that's important because I want it to be somewhat fun to play against, despite how strong it can be. And if anyone's looking for a lands deck, I know there's a billion options now. Obviously, I'm biased, but to me, Titania is the best option. You can do some crazy things, so many fun things, and it's a huge range of power levels that can be built at. You can do everything from the most casual, janky version to probably darn near competitive if you're running Moxes and crazy stuff like that. But it is a great time, and I do think that the variety you get with it will keep it as a deck that you're going to be playing for a long time to come. Now, the number 1 deck on this list is... This is the peak of my evolution, I think, as a Magic player, and what I find, finally finding what I want from the game. And I think, quick rant, as most of this video has been, I think one of the most important things for finding your own personal number 1 deck of all time is finding that role you want at a commander table. Almost impossible to pick a deck based on what power level you want it to be at. You could try to, as hard as you want, pick a deck that's going to be able to play in a variety of power levels, but power levels are just too hard to define. So I think kind of defining your role at the table is a little bit easier. So do you want to be that aggro aggressive player where you're trying to get out fast and try to kill people, and you want to be the boogeyman at the table? Do you want to be the deck that kind of lays low, and do you want the style that's going to just let you kind of just chill and then do something crazy? Do you want to be the combo-y player that's trying to put weird things together? You want to figure out where you sit at the table and find decks that kind of cater to that. And I found out this Scarab God, which, spoiler alert, is my number 1 deck of all time for me, finds the perfect spot of where I really don't want to win many games. I found out, maybe it's because some of my earlier decks won so much, I don't really enjoy winning so much as making crazy stuff happen. And in my experience, the Scarab God has been the best at that for me. I've deck teched this one. I've actually since changed it to an Artifact Matters Scarab God list, which is weird, and I'll do a deck update at one point. But really, the whole point of this deck is to use a bunch of removal, use a bunch of interaction to survive the early game, and then use the Scarab God as this weird just reanimation thing where you're just stealing the best things that have died throughout the course of a game over and over again, and then using that to basically, between the Scarab God's drain effect and some equipment, take people out. And it is a weird version of the deck. If you look at the list, I chose some cards that maybe you don't see in a lot of Scarab God decks, but It is just so much fun. One of the things that I love about it so much is it's able to constantly progress the game towards an endpoint without ever rushing to get there. So that Scarab God ability of the draining people for your zombies. I'm not playing zombie tribal, so I'm only going to have maybe 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 zombies out at a time. So it's just incremental life loss. You're not just bam, everyone's dead. And then I run a lot of equipment. I run a lot of the swords in here so that the Scarab God can over time kind of poke, and you can swing with your zombies and give your zombies evasion and little things like that. And basically every time I play this, people's life totals are getting low, but it's never at an alarming rate. And it was so hard for me to ever find a deck that kind of felt like it fit that spot. And this one has just done so perfectly. Every time I play this, I feel like I'm involved in the game most times. Ken has stopped that from happening by murdering me with my Scarab God deck before like turn like 5. I think there was like a 3-game stretch. So outside of playing against Ken, you will always have a good time with this deck. Tons of interaction, tons of removal, but at the same time, it's not just counterspell.deck. It's not just like stacks.deck. It's you're able to do it in a way that really keeps the table really conversing. It's just a bunch of back and forth. I think this is my peak deck for sitting at a table with some friends, having a couple drinks, and just really having a good time. And whoever wins, wins. We're going to see that at some point, but it's going to really just get the interaction and the fun going. And that's, for me, is really why this is my favorite deck ever. And I'm curious to see how long it stays there. If Titania couldn't overtake it, I don't think anything could. But yeah, this deck is, for me, the peak of EDH. And that is going to do it for this top 5 list. I really hope y'all enjoyed it. This video was so much fun to make. I know it was a little ranting in there on and off, but just talking about these decks makes me so happy. I know y'all probably do it too, but these are the type of decks, especially Titania and the Scarab God, where I'll just take them out of their deck box and just look at them. Just go through, look at all the cards in there, just think about how happy it makes me. Think about the last time I got to play it, kind of looking forward to the next time I get to play it. But definitely let me know in the comments below if y'all have your kind of your forever decks, or the one deck you know that always makes you the happiest. Let me know what that is. I would love to kind of hear what types of commanders those are. And it's, believe me, if y'all watch the streams, you've seen these plenty, and you're going to keep seeing them in the future, probably more than anybody really wants to, but I can't help it. They're always coming back. And as always, a huge shout out to all the patrons. We love and appreciate y'all so much. And make sure everyone to come check out our gameplay streams. Commander Petty, Saturday nights at 8:30 p.m. They've been so much fun. We've been on a streak of just some great games recently. If you see our gameplay videos posted throughout the week, those are just replays of those streams. So definitely come join live, come hang out. Tons of stuff. I squeezed this in right before Strixhaven, so don't worry. There's plenty of Strixhaven content to come. But until then, I will see y'all next time.